Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the SIICaP Data Camp. I am Draylan John Terrible from the High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division. I hope everyone is having a pleasant Friday. Today is a special day as this is PhilSA's first time to host a data camp. For everyone's information, this is our second series after Lakbay Kalawakan. And we would like to thank everyone that supported and attended our first series. We are also holding this workshop as we celebrate our third anniversary. The Data Camp is one of the activities for this celebration. Hashtag join the mission and stay updated on our other activities for our third year. Follow us on our website and social media pages. The link is in the chat box. We would like to give a shout out to our campers from various local, national government units, colleges, universities, from the private sector, and enthusiasts who are here today. We hope that our sessions will be interactive and we will be able to learn from each other. So before we start, here are some few reminders. We expect participants to conduct themselves in a manner free from discriminatory practices. Participants should mute their microphones and turn off their cameras when not in use. Participants are encouraged to use the chat box and wait for the speaker to acknowledge them during the Q&A session. The question and answer portion is also allotted after each speaker's presentation. For everyone's information, this session is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. An evaluation and feedback form link will be sent after the session. Please answer them to receive your certificate of attendance. And lastly, our lectures will include interactive notebooks, which we will share the link for you to copy. The instructions will be presented later, so you can follow along or choose to do them later after the event. Please note that we are being live streamed on YouTube, and we will be also posting details on our Discord server. So join us on our Discord. So then the link will also be in the chat box. So finally, officially start the program, and then to kick off our data camp, let us please welcome our director from the Space Information Infrastructure Bureau, Dr. Ariel Blanco. So,
Last month of August, the Philippine Space Agency is celebrating its third anniversary with the theme Sama-samang Pagbangon Gamit ang Kaalaman Mula Kalawakan. This highlights the crucial role of end users in harnessing data and information from space to benefit and empower communities. Hashtag 3 years of PhilSA, hashtag Mula Kalawakan. PhilSA was created by virtue of Republic Act 11363, which is also known as the Philippine Space Act. It mandates the Philippine Space Agency to be the primary policy, planning, coordinating, implementing, and administrative entity that will plan, develop, and promote the National Space Program in line with the Philippine Space Policy of the Executive Branch of the Government. This year, PhilSA has been focusing on Eskwela, or the inclusive SSTA know-how, utilization, exchange, and localization activities. Eskwela complements our flagship projects by implementing public support, increasing public support, awareness, interest, and appreciation for space technology and applications, contributing to the development of human capital in space, and fostering science, technology, and innovation culture for space and society. In line with PhilSA Eskwela, our Bureau, the Space Information Infrastructure Bureau, with its 3 divisions, is implementing SIICaP, the Space Information Infrastructure Capacity Building and training program. SIICaP aims to promote awareness on how SSTA or space science and technology applications contribute to our society. SIICaP also aims to build and enhance SSTA capability of our partners, stakeholders, and beneficiaries. In the previous months, the Space Missions Control and Operations Division, or SMCOD, successfully conducted Lakbay Kalawakan. It is the first of the SIICaP series. As we celebrate our third anniversary, we invite you to #join the mission of our second SIICaP series, simply called Data Camp. This 5-part workshop organized by the High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division, HPCISD, will cover how scientists and engineers use open source technologies to process geospatial data. When the data camp was announced, we received queries and comments. Kailangan ko to, I need this. Is prior knowledge and skills in Python needed? Can our students participate? In this data camp, everyone is welcome. Welcome to join and participate even without prior knowledge of data processing. Remember the I in Scala? Inclusive. After all, it's #space for everyone. The camp will run from the last week of August, so that is today, to the first week of October. You will learn about raster and vector data, how to process and analyze raster and vector datasets using Python. And I guess the most exciting part is when everyone shares the problems that you are interested in and discusses the solutions that you are proposing. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the SIICaP team led by Engineer Cyrus Nicofante, the HPCISD led by its Division Chief, Romer Christy Aranas, the Public Relations Information Division led by Tricia Zafra, and resource speakers from the Space Data Mobilization and Applications Division, or SDMAD. And of course, to our dearest participants, maraming salamat for your keen interest in the data camp. I wish you fun and fulfilling learning through this data camp. #3 years of PhilSA, #space for everyone, #mula Kalawakan, #join the mission. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Doc Ariel, for the warm welcome. Once again, today is our first day of Data Camp. This is a series of workshops on geospatial data processing, and we would like to thank everyone who is in here and made time to listen to the session. And it's time to move on to the exciting part, which is the camp proper. Here to discuss with us the details and program of this camp is our chief from HPCISD, Sir RK Aranas. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, thank you, Dylan. So I'll just share my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm the chief of HPCISD, the High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division of PhilSA. So kami yung IT division, dev team, sysad, so lahat ng computer-related stuff sa PhilSA. So I'm proud to welcome you all to the Data Camp. So the Data Camp is actually some background lang. This is the spiritual successor ng Diwata Data Camp, which we used to hold dati sa Stamina for Space program. That one was where we taught people, usually mas smaller group yung nandun, ano lang yun, mga 30 people, how to use the data ni Diwata kasi it's important to know how to process the data because that's the main reason why we actually send satellites into orbit. Di ba na cover naman na natin sa previous na SIICaP sessions sa Lakbay Kalawakan, yung mga satellites, paano sila sinasend sa space. So ito naman is yung reason for doing that. So otherwise kasi kung we just send data, we just send the satellites into space tapos wala naman siyang ginagawa, we're just spending space junk. So And then we taught people how to use the data, and then we also taught people how to use it, to process it using open source software. Kasi without, it would be useless if we taught people how to process the data, pero pag uwi nila sa bahay or after the lecture, hindi rin nila magagamit. So this is part of our thrust to teach people how to do it themselves. So, pero yun, that one was medyo intensive siya, and konti lang yung tao. So, parang dati kasi kailang tutukan lahat ng tao, diba? So like 30 people, tapos parang may mga TA monitor mo bawat isa. But now, ang dami nyo, nasa hundreds na kayo, hindi na po namin kakayanin. So we had to get creative with the workshop format. So we changed it up a bit. Hindi na siya hands-on format. More of ano na siya. We can think of it as like a cooking show. So I think familiar naman po tayo sa cooking show. So papakita namin sa inyo kung paano pinaprocess yung data, and then you can see how it's done, and then sa dulo we will show you the recipes. So 'di ba, so parang gano'n naman. So kita mo muna first para maengganyo kayo, and then sa dulo you can, well, if you masipag kayo, you can try to follow along, but we would not recommend it. So mas recommended na i-share naman namin yung recipes, so you can just do it after. And then so yun. So how would that work? So pakita ko lang po yung ano natin. So yung topics natin is yung first, this one is introduction lang, parang setup pa lang. Sineset up pa natin yung kitchen. So na-mention ko kanina, may data and software. So since kami yung mga computer people and IT people, we will be using programming. So we'll be using Python. It's one of the easier programming languages to use. At ano din siya, newbie friendly, and siya din actually yung main language for geospatial processing. So kasi kahit yung mga proprietary software ng sa geospatial data processing, Python na rin yung gamit nila. And then yung open source software like GIS, Python din yung gamit nila. So if you learn this, marami siyang paggagamitan, hindi lang for geospatial data processing. And then after that, we'll be discussing yung vector data processing. So ito yung mga data na nakikita nyo, I guess, sa Google Maps, yung hindi satellite imagery. So yung mga lines, di ba, minomodel kasi natin yung mundo na yung mga roads, for example, lines siya, yung mga buildings, rectangles, mga ganun. So dito siya ma-discuss. And then after that, yung next naman is di-discuss natin yung raster data naman. Ito yung mga image like satellite data talaga. So parang mga photos. And after that, yung next session naman doon is i-combine lahat ng ginagawa ay yung raster siya vector data processing. Kasi on their own, marami ka na kayong magagawa, but if you combine them together, you will be able to do more complex analysis. And then after that, may tayo. We will be receiving proposals kung may gusto kayong isolve. Kung gusto niyo mag-present, yung mga matatapang na gusto mag-present, so you'll be allowed to pitch, and we will select yung mga proposals, and then we will also provide support. So may guest drop-in sessions, or anong tawag doon, parang consultation sessions. So kung may problema kayo or may gusto kayong how do you process the data, mga ganun. So we will be there to support you. And then sa dulo, we will showcase yung outputs ng mga magpe-present. So ayun. So what will we get out of this? Well, aside sa knowledge, there will be certificates. So yung per session, we will be giving may certificate naman of attendance per session. And then if you complete yung buong series, then there's another one for that. And syempre, yung special certificates for those who will be presenting. So after this ba, will you be like master hackers or super programmers? So unfortunately, I can't promise that. But the goal of that thing, expertise really takes time and practice. But since nasa inyo na yung recipes, you can go practice on your own after. And then at least na-open na sa inyo yung possibilities kung ano yung pwede nyong gawin. And yun, I think hindi ko na patatagalin. So if you have more questions, you can ask yung sa SIICaP team, or you can check din yung website. So happy learning and good luck on your data camp. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir RK. Thank you very much, Sir RK, and I'm excited to see those ideas and presentations on the last day. So I also hope to learn from all our participants. So up next is our first tutorial. But before that, I prepared a simple, but I think it will boost our energy. It's a quiz to jumpstart our afternoon. So let me just prepare the quiz a bit. So wait lang po. Ready ko lang. All right. Uh, so this is a quiz from Mentimeter. So it's all about like introduction po sa programming. So you can join on accessing www.menti.com and then enter the code 2031-0455. Or kapag may mga cellphones naman po kayo dyan na available, you can use it to scan the QR code. So it will bring you directly to the website. So ask na lang rin po ako ng support from my teammates to assist the participants on accessing the link. So, ayun. So, wait lang tayo ng siguro hintayin natin kahit mga 60 or 70% of the participants. Kahit siguro mga 300. 380. 294, 299, 300. Tingin ko marami pa pong sumasali. Right. Tayin lang po natin. Alright, so $355, $59, $60. Marami pa po sumasali. At siguro start pa tayo mga 150. So hintayin lang natin baka nag-access pa yung iba. 2 minutes. Alright. We are at 360. Ooh. Oh, 370. Guys, pasok lang. Nasa 380 na po. Participants on our quiz. So, baka po may hahabol pa. 391, malapit na mag 150. So, talagang maraming competitive sa ating participants. So, let's go! Alright, 1 minute. So, tip lang po pala, gamitin pa rin yung real name as much as possible. Po 400 na tayo, guys. Hahabol pa ba? Yung tatlo o dalawa? Sige. guys, pasok lang. Okay, mag-start na tayo. I think 401. So it's almost, okay, let's go. Marami pa naman pong chances na sa iba pang part ng series natin. So you can join that if you can't join this this quiz. So let's go. Start na po tayo. So the first question. A collection of instructions to complete a specific task is a program, an application, or an event. So 336 got the correct answer. It's a program. Let's see the leaderboard. Oh, fastest is Security Tune from Sword Art Online. Next question. In programming, what is an action done by a user code? Is it a task, code, or an event? Alright, it's a task. Medyo nalito po ata yung ating participants doon. So, next. Sino kaya ang ating top players for this round? Ooh. Top 1 pa rin si Kirito, number 2 si Robbie, top 3 si James Chavis. Next question. What does LED stands for? It loop entire document, light emitting diode, or little immersion display. Correct, light emitting diode. Napalitan na ang ating top 1. Top 1 na si Robbie. Next. Converting a program so it can be understood by a computer is called conversion, compiling, or completion. It's compiling. So, next, tingnan po natin yung leaderboard natin. So, pabilisan din po pala sumagot dito. So, ayun. Baka po nagtataka yung iba bakit hindi mataas yung point. So, depende po kung gaano kayo kabilis sasagot. So what can help you remember what a block of code does? Comments, buttons, or tasks? It's comments. Next, tignan po natin ang ating leaderboard. Let's see. Hindi pa rin, talaga pong hindi nagpapatinag ang ating top 1. Si Sir Robbie. Next question. Go guys, kaya nyo pang humabol. What is the process of repeating a piece of code? compiling, importing, or iteration. Next up, iteration. Tingnan natin ang ating leaderboard. Kung napalitan na ba ang ating top 1. Sino kaya? Ayan, hindi pa rin talaga sila natitinag. So we are down for, I think, ilan na lang po ba ang natitira nating questions. Which of the following is a loop block? For block, if block, or an else block? Time's up, okay. Marami pong tumama, 195. Pero marami rin nagkamali. It's okay. Tingnan po natin ang ating leaderboard. Ito na po, humahabol na po si Carl. Napalitan na po ang ating second place kanina. Wala na po si Sir Chubby. So, alright, let's do this. Malapit na po tayo sa final questions. You can do this, guys. A variable used as an input for a function. Is it a parameter, a function, or is it an event? So. Time's up. Yun, 300 participants got the correct answer. Congratulations. Let's see our leaderboard and the standing. Ito na po, humahabol na. Mapapalitan kaya ang ating top 3. Ito na po si Alright. Hindi po sila nagpatinag. Talagang mabibilis silang sumagot. Ang gagaling. Next question. What is a looping image that changes form? Alam na alam nito, guys. Marami nito sa memes, sa Facebook. Is it a mover, a still, or a GIF? Let's see. Alright, 338 got the correct answer. Okay lang po yan sa mga nagkamali. Better luck next time. Tingnan po natin, eto na po ang ating standings. Hindi talaga nagpapatinag si Sir Robbie on the first place. Pero hinahabol po siya ni Sir Carl. Konti lang ang lamang, so let's go! We are down, I think, on our last question. What is the correct pseudocode to turn LED in position 0 and 0 on? So medyo an advantage po ang ating mga may background sa programming dyan. Alam na alam nito. You can do this, guys. Time's up. So that's our... marami pa rin tumama. 247 kung that's the correct answer. 62 and 68 kung nagkabalik. So, ayun. Sino po ang ating final result? Ayun, congratulations to Sir Robbie, garnering 9,537 points. So, ayun. Thank you guys for participating. Hope you enjoy the game. Ayun. I hope, kamusta naman po ang game natin? I hope na nag-enjoy kayo sa ating simpleng palaro. So, alright. I hope you had fun. Thank you to everyone who participated. We will now be moving on to our first tutorial, which will be presented by Miss Ira Villapando. Ira will introduce Google Colab. This will be our environment in accessing and working with our data. She will show us how to work with cells in writing our program or texts. She will also how to install Python libraries in Colab. Again, just a reminder, if you have questions, please use the chat box and wait until the speaker acknowledges it. So without further ado, let's all welcome Miss Ira Villapando. Miss Ira, are you ready?
Hi, I'm not sure if I'm ready, but wait lang ah. Allow me to share my screen while okay. I think I'm sharing my screen. Is that right? Tama ba yung lumalabas? Jay, are you there?
Yes, po, we can see your
All
screen.
right, great, thank you. Thanks for that very quick and very fun activity. I'm sure everyone had fun. Baka daw ikaw, Dre, yung top one. Kaya lagi siyang tama. And anyway, I'm Ira. I'm part of the HPC ISD, the High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division, who is hosting this data camp. I'm hoping to present in this presentation talk about what notebooks are, bakit natin sila ginagamit, kailangan natin sila pwedeng gamitin, especially when we are writing codes with Python. Hopefully this presentation will help you get familiar with the platform that will be used throughout the data camp, which is called the Google Collab. But first, I'm working on the assumption that not everyone has heard or even used a notebook, a Python notebook, much less even heard or used Jupyter Notebook. But I'm pretty sure, karang madami na dito sa atin inside this this session has used this notebook, Jupyter Notebook. It's perfectly fine if you don't know what it is, because I'll say it anyway. Jupyter Notebook looks like this. It is an open source application. I-iterate ko lang yung sinabi ni Sir RK kanina na we like to use open source applications at work. And we can use it to create and share documents that have a mix of live code, formatted text, like this one, na meron siyang text here, some image here, and even formats, and include links and other objects and media. So hence, that's why it's called notebook. Parang kapag nagsusulat tayo sa notes natin, minsan dinodrawingan natin and everything. And so Jupyter supports not only Python though. So parang normally we think when we use Jupyter Notebook, it's all for Python. It supports also other programming languages. In short, you can view Jupyter Notebook as a very versatile, robust application that provides you with very many capabilities. Why am I bringing up Jupyter Notebook? Kasi yung platform na gagamitin natin today, and I believe for the rest of the data camp in the coming weeks, is a notebook similar to Jupyter Notebook, and it's the Colab. In a nutshell, Colab works, looks, and feels similar to Jupyter Notebook. So meron siyang mga random icons here, a place where you could write your text, and a place where you could write your code. Here, I hope to discuss Colab and what it is, how to use it, why use it at all, and touch on maybe a few Python stuff lang, just for demonstrations purposes. But I'm hoping that later on, when Sir Randy presents about Python, he'll be able to give a more in-depth discussion, I guess, about Python. So the next one is this one. Where can you access Colab? Colab stands for basically collaboratory. You can access it on collab.research.google.com. Some of you already probably know about this, but for the others that don't, yes, you can access it on that link. You only just need a Google account, and that's it. If you use Python in work or school, want somewhere to write, test, and execute your codes without having to worry about setting up a Python environment on your local machine, kasi minsan parang ang bigat niya masyado or something like that, then Colab is maybe a good place to go. You can think of Colab as a hosted Jupyter notebook. It kind of looks like Jupyter notebook, as I earlier said, and even works like one, but the difference is it doesn't really need you to download anything or set up anything on your computer. All you have to do is open a browser, log into Google, navigate to the link I said earlier, which is colab.research.google.com, and you're set. You can even access it via a browser on your phones or tablets. I'm pretty sure it works because I tried once, and of course, while it works, using Colab on a desktop, computer, or laptop will give you a better experience. Colab is especially useful when working on machine learning, data analysis, and even education and research. Machine learning and data analysis because, if I remember correctly, Colab came about to address some concerns about compute and storage resources of some data scientists. You can say it is especially made because of machine learning. It comes with preset packages for many different applications already, but notably, libraries na nag-exist for machine learning and data analysis. In fact, when you open Colab Notebook and check your directory, you'll find some sample datasets already there. It's very good for machine learning, machine learning. It is also advantageous to learning because if you're a beginner in Python or machine learning or even data analysis, Colab is a good place to practice and test your codes. Finally, if for some reason or another, kailangan yung pabilisin yung pagtakbo ng codes nyo, ng program nyo, and kailangan nyo ng mas powerful na mga hardware, Colab allows you to use free access to have free access of their resources like GPUs or TPUs. Although reminder lang na just because you're using or just because naka-access na kayo dun sa GPU or sa TPU or any hardware accelerator, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that your code will immediately run faster. Most likely, you're going to need to use GPUs for deep learning and related stuff, or yung mga codes na with packages or libraries that could actually interface with these hardware accelerators. Another caveat is the use of hardware accelerators like this is subject to fair use policy. Fair use policy, that means basically kung ano yung kayang ibigay sa'yo ni Colab, ibibigay din, or ni Google, ibibigay din nila dun sa other users nila. So fair lang dapat yung use natin lahat. And while I've basically tried to sell Colab to you, it is also imperative that I mention another one. Colab is not for heavy-duty use, kahit pa sabihin na may GPU siya and everything. If you need more resources than what Google can offer, sometimes baka makain yung buong RAM na ipoprovide sa inyo ni Google. You might need to invest on infrastructure or cloud-based products or use maybe the premium tier of Colab, which is Colab Plus, I think. Colab is good, or Colab Pro. Colab is good, but I personally wouldn't recommend that you use it for implementations, production, or long-term use cases. Dun lang sa mga magagaan and I guess when you're learning something. Here are some other features of Colab that I guess are worth mentioning. Documentation. Like Jupyter Notebook, Colab lets you document your source code. Besides, of course, yung inline comments na nilalagay natin sa mga codes. With notes through the text cell, which I will be discussing later on. In a text cell, basically, you can include images, links, text discussions, and even math equations through LaTeX, if you're familiar with LaTeX. With Colab also, like Jupyter Notebook, you could create and share your notebooks, but I guess the advantage to Colab is you could upload it. Think Google Docs or Google Sheets. In a way, you can imagine Colab as a Google Workspace app, but for Jupyter Notebooks. A side note, however, is that live editing or real-time editing between or among collaborators, it's not possible. So, for instance, meron tayong dalawang collaborators on a single Colab notebook. Hindi kagad magre-reflect sa akin yung changes na ginawa nung collaborator ko dun sa notebook na wino-work on namin. And if two people edit the document at the same time, only one edit is retained. Yung ginawa ng isa, hindi ma-record at all. I-discard lang siya. So another advantage to Colab is that you could import or save notebooks from and to Google Drive and GitHub. So you won't need to interface with your own local machine at all. Parang if masyadong mabigat yung iyong code or something, or hindi kaya ng local machine mo, then Colab is a good place to go. Just think of it as you're connecting your external drive or flash drive to Colab, except ginagamit mo si Google Drive. Now, this is good for machine learning, data science stuff, because you could also import external datasets, I believe from Kaggle, I'm not sure about others, and integrate PyTorch, TensorFlow, Keras, OpenCV. I'm pretty sure you don't need to install them explicitly in Colab. They're already there, you just need to import. And here's how Colab user interface looks like. Allow me to walk you through parts of what I believe will be useful in the coming sessions of the data camp. Let's start with this one, yung notebook name or yung file name, however you'd like to call it. You can set a name to your notebook or rename it by just clicking on that one. Magiging editable field na siya. And if you see a document, by the way, na may extension that goes .ipynb, then most likely, or almost always, yun yung Python, interactive Python notebook na siya. Yun yung code. Pwede na siyang basahin ni Google Colab or ni Jupyter Notebook. So here it is, yung .ipynb. It's pretty straightforward. It just means interactive Python notebook. That is, you can execute your codes while at the same time have a combination of text and media in it. I believe that two of the most important concepts about Colab that we need to familiarize ourselves with are code cell and the text cell. I think yan talaga yung pinaka foundation or something. Yan talaga yung pinaka feature niya. You can find these buttons on the upper left side of your screen, just below the menu bar. Let's start first with the code cell, how to create one. It's easy, you just have to click on the plus code button and then the code cell will appear. It looks like this with a run button on the left side and an empty space all through your screen. It is a place where you can type a line or a block of code. To illustrate, let's say we write a line that assigns a string value hello world to the variable text underscore hello. You can execute that particular line of code by hitting Control or Command plus Enter on the keyboard, or by clicking the play button on the left side of the code cell. You will see a dashed circle around the play button. That just means, okay, ginagawa na ng Colab ng paraan to run your code. Except, let's take note of this one, the connecting. Colab first needs to initialize at least once in a session before it can execute your code. For this presentation, by the way, I will define a session as an open Colab notebook. You can open as many tabs of Colab as you can, but I wouldn't recommend doing that, and I'll mention it later on why. But say you open 2 tabs of the Colab, I'll define each tab as a session. So that's for this discussion, we'll define it as such. If you run a code cell without having initialized Colab yet, then you will see this part saying connecting. It will change eventually and say something like initializing until it's connected. What it does basically is connect you. But to what? Basically, it connects your session to a Google virtual machine. By default, Colab connects your session to a Google Compute Engine instance that has approximately 12 gig of RAM and around 50 to 60 or 70, I think, gig of disk storage. This changes every time. So while it may seem that you're running your code on your computer kasi nasa browser kayo, what we're doing is that ina-access talaga natin yung resources ni Google. It's not our local machine that's working. Now, there is something about it that's just that we have to remember though. The allocation of these resources that Colab will give us, that Google will give us, it's temporary. If you haven't worked on the notebook and left it idle for at least 30 minutes, then this allocation will be freed up and you'll need to reinitialize the session again. This also happens when you kept a code running for at least 12 hours, then that job, kahit pa nagra-run pa siya and everything, magta-terminate siya because Google will be revoking your access to their resources. This is because Google shares their compute resources, not just with you. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina about fair use policy. But many others use Colab too. We don't own the resources. We don't own the CPU. We don't own the memory, the storage. We're just borrowing them. And if we don't use them in a prolonged time, then Google reserves the right to share them with others who will utilize them. Now, what if you need to connect to, while you're connected to a runtime, to a resource, what if you also need to connect to a hardware accelerator like a GPU? To add a GPU or TPU on your runtime, there is a menu. There in the menu, you could see a runtime. And just click on it, select change runtime type, and this will pop up, the notebook settings. There will be a drop down for hardware accelerator selections, which contains none, or GPU or TPU. Now, to get the most out of Colab, consider though closing your Colab tabs when you are done with your work, or avoid using GPU altogether kapag naman hindi nyo naman kailangan talaga gumamit. This will make it less likely that you will run into usage limits in Colab because use of Colab, as I will iterate it again, it's limited. Back to our earlier example, medyo napalayo tayo dun. When we run the code cell text_hello equals hello world, magpiprint, mag-store na yung value na yun dun sa variable na text_hello. And you would even be able to print it. But now, what if hindi lang iisang line, iisang cell code, yung code cell yun nandiyan dyan. What if you have many other blocks of code, but in different code cells? Like this one. Just to illustrate or describe what this does. In the first part is, in the first cell, I am trying to import libraries, packages for the program to run. On the second cell, I assign arrays to different variables. I assign an array containing 1 and 8 to X points, and an array containing 3 and 10 to a variable named Y points. And here on the third cell, I'm just basically plotting them. Now, in this case, I can choose to run them one by one, individually. But what if I want to save some time and run them all at once? Or what if gusto ko yung yung second, magsisimula lang yung pag-run ng code from the second cell onwards? In the runtime menu, there are many different options that you can choose from. There's run all, run before, run the focused cell, run selection, run after, and they just basically speak for themselves. Run all means i-run mo lahat ng code cells na nandun sa notebook mo. Run before is when you are on a specific code cell, say in the middle, ang ira-run lang niya is yung first ever code cell na nandun sa notebook mo until dun sa point na just before the cell that you are currently in. Run the focus cell is what we did earlier, nag-run lang tayo ng isang particular cell, which is kung ano yung ina-edit natin currently. And run selection is you will just highlight something in your code cell. It could be 3 lines of codes in your code cell, and you'll just highlight one, and yun lang yung i-run ni Colab. Run after, on the other hand, runs all code cells just below your currently focused cell. Hindi niya i-run yung anything before that. Now, what if during a time na ni-run all ko siya, nagkaroon ng error because wala daw yung module or yung package na hinahanap ko. To install, you will need to interface with the operating system, which we don't own, which Google owns. Thankfully, ina-allow siya ni Colab. So it's not just, Colab is not just for data science and everything. You can install other packages too, if you need it. So here the error says, I need to install using pip. Here it says. And it also says to install with an exclamation point. That's a difference between interfacing with the operating system on here versus on normal command lines in Linux. So here I tried to install raster.io package by saying pip install raster.io, but with exclamation point right at the start. As we're working on Ubuntu OS, the commands it accepts will only be Linux-based ones. This sample here shows how to install a missing Python package using pip. And here are other basic commands that can be executed in Colab. I'll try to say, define each one para lang dun sa mga hindi alam ito. The first one basically prints your working directory. So Colab assigns you to a current working directory called content. Next one is ls -lh. It lists a very detailed view of all your files and folders currently in your system or in your current working directory. Next one is mkdir /new_directory, which is a folder name that I just assigned. And what it does is it creates a new folder called new_directory. ls, here, this one, just basically lists all your files and folders inside your working directory. Sure, we can list our files or check our working directory just by executing Linux commands. The way it's possible doing it in command line, can we do it by checking through a UI? Because it's UI based anyway. Is it there? Yes, there is actually a way, and it's right here on the left side panel of Google Colab. We can check for the content of our working directory by clicking on the folder icon here in the left side panel. It will list all the files and folders inside, like this one. This is the sample data folder that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the beginning of the presentation, where some sample test and training sets for learning, machine learning, data analysis are right here. You can upload files, refresh the directory listing, and mount your Google Drive and show hidden files. In this example, the new directory folder I created earlier even shows up. I also tried to mount my Google Drive, and it also shows here, Drive, and then My Drive, Shared Drives. Note though that files and folders that you upload and create during a session, not the notebook, but yung files na na-create, yung files na na-create and yung folders, etc. that you created during a particular runtime or a session will be gone once you're done or when your allocation is revoked. It doesn't, sometimes merong mga cases daw na even after a while, nare-retain pa din, but most likely mawawala siya. Just as the runtime is temporary, your files are too. Because remember that each runtime grants you access to compute resources, like RAM and disk. Once revoked, then you have to start over again. That's why personally, I recommend that you upload your files on, if you're going to work with Colab, I recommend that you upload your files on Google Drive, mount it every time you need them, instead of uploading them every time you need to initialize runtime. You could also just save your files on your Google Drive through the user interface file explorer of Google Colab. Think of your Google Drive again like an external drive or a flash drive. Besides this file explorer, which is a lot of help, Colab also has something that I believe Jupyter Notebook doesn't, unless you use an extension or an add-on. That is, Colab allows you to check your Python variables through a variable explorer, or in Colab's terms, variable inspector. So it looks like this. It's also on the left side panel, just above the file explorer. These are the variables I initialized earlier, the text underscore hello, X points, and Y points. As you can see, it also displays the attributes of each variable, what type it is, and what shape. And actually, if you just hover your mouse over each one, ipapakita din niya yung value na laman niya. So it would look like this one. Now, I think those discussed earlier are just some of the key things to remember when working on code cells. Madami pa yun, but especially for starters, I think that's a bare minimum enough. Let's now move on to the text cell. When you click on the plus text button, just beside the plus code, a text cell will appear. It's where you type in some documentation or notes, insert objects like images and math equations. Text cells are formatted using a markup language called Markdown. By default, the preview of your text cell will show up on the right side. I know for some this might look a little overwhelming, but if you're not really familiar with Markdown or LaTeX for the math equations, that's fine. There are a lot of cheat sheets around that you can use in your favor. And of course, learning this is best learned by doing. So you may practice doing this when you have the time or something. Here, I basically just made a header, lorem ipsum, and created some formatted text in bold, inserted a link to PhilSA website, inserted an equation using LaTeX, and inserted the SIICaP Data Camp event image from the PhilSA website. One of the good things about using Markdown, at least for specifying headers or sections, is that it will show in the table of contents on the left side panel. That same panel where you could find the variable inspector and the file explorer. Here, the section I wrote earlier here, the lorem ipsum, it showed up in the table of contents. It makes it easier to jump into particular sections whenever necessary. Now, you could access this notebook, bit.ly/SIICaP-Colab. This is a notebook that I wrote, that I created to be able to, for you to be able to check and practice some of the things that I described or discussed earlier. But for a really quick demonstration, I'm not sure if you've all opened it, if some of you have already opened this link, but I'm assuming that majority of you already have. Allow me to move on to the next one. This one. When you access that link, bit.ly/SIICaP-Colab, you will find this one. And I think the only difference is that there is something here that goes around like copy to drive. I encourage you to do that if you want to have a copy of this notebook, because you won't be able to edit this notebook at all because it's for viewing only. I mentioned earlier that one advantage of a text cell is that it allows you to create a table of contents for easy navigation. Here is the table of contents. I'm not sure if you could see my mouse, but you would be able to see here all the sections I created. One about cells, one about working with Python, one about just a simple example. This is basically just similar to the one from earlier, and more about some resources. If you're a beginner, if you're willing to learn, wanting to know more about using Colab, using Python, writing with Markdown and LaTeX for mathematics or equations, then you could also refer to this one. They're basically from collab.research@google.com. You could see them in the welcome thing you see every time you access collab.research@google.com. I tried to create this text cell. You could edit it by double clicking. When you do that, you will be able to see some formatting, some markdown that you may try to practice with, just so that you'll know how it works. And earlier, I did say that you need to initialize first your session. If you haven't initialized a session like this one, and you run it immediately, magko-connect siya dito. But you could just click here, which is connect. Reconnect siya sa akin because I already had this earlier. So let me reconnect. And this basically what this does is that, as I said earlier, it allows Google to give me, to share with me some of the resources. Now that I'm connected to, it's not here, there. It's not pretty visible, I think, but it says I have 12.68 gig of disk, and I have used 37 gig of 107 gig of disk. The other one is 1268 gig RAM. And then, yeah, we could run this once that basically just assigns values to variables, print text underscore hello, print random underscore sum, and just check if this code works the same way it did here. You could explore this later on. You could explore it now, whatever is comfortable with you. I think that's it for me. I hope you had learned something new, or if you have any comments or questions, let me know. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Ira. So we will now be entertaining questions. So for the participants, I hope the instructions were clear again. So you can try to run the notebook later, or if you have free time. So if you have encountered a problem while doing the activity, you can also use the SIICaP Discord for us to guide you. So now we can have 10 more minutes to entertain some questions. So it's the time to ask. You can just put it on the chat box. And you may also opt to raise your hand and be acknowledged. And so we hope that you can turn on your mic and camera while answering if possible. So for the first question here, let me pull up. So Ma'am Ira, it's a question coming from Sir Israel Jasper Joaquin. Yung select run feature po ba ay nandun sa collab alone? Para po hindi ka na mag-comment out ng ayaw mong kaisama sa pag-run.
Hi, I think one of the advantage talaga ni Collab is, yes, you don't really have to comment out yung mga codes na ayaw mo mapasama. So, I'm pretty sure when you say run feature, hubad na nandun sa Collab alone ay parang hindi na mag-comment out. You could say it's like that. But, syempre kapag nag-run all ka, ma-run pa din niya yung mga hindi mo kinoment out. So, it's a good place. Collab or Jupyter Notebook, whichever you prefer to use. It's a good place to run only specific lines of code. Parang paghiwa-hiwalay, parang ano mo na sila, i-batch mo na yung mga lines of codes that you think are related and the lines of codes that you're just testing out. Parang you could make a code cell wherein mga testing ano lang siya, testing your code, and then another code cell wherein you're sure it works already. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I hopefully it does.
Okay. So another question, Ma'am. Can you give examples of applications where you use Google Colab?
Example of applications where you use Google Colab. I think majority of the data science stuff you can use Google Colab, especially for visualization purposes. So for example, you were asked to plot a graph. This is a good place to go. You won't need to create a file that contains just your code and then run it separately and then hope that your image shows up. Here, you would see it inline, your graphs. So I'd say one of the best applications of Colab is, of course, for data visualization, data science, and of course, as earlier mentioned by Sir RK, dun sa mga GIS related na tasks na.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So here's another question from Mr. John William Mbate. Is it possible to create sections in Jupyter Notebook? I'm not that really familiar with Colab yet, because we mostly just use Jupyter Notebook on Project Sparta. So the question is it possible to create sections in Jupyter Notebook?
Yes, that's how Jupyter Notebook works. Colab basically just emulates that. So except instead nga na dito sa Jupyter Notebook parang ginagamit natin yung machine natin. This one, si Colab, you're not using your machine, but you're using resources from Google, so the cloud.
Thanks. And then another question from Mr. Zhang Ronald. Hi, may I ask how to access files from Google Drive folders at where the notebook is located at? I used to use Google Colab, but find it inconvenient because I have to upload my files every time using it.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's inconvenient nga kapag ginagamit mo yung runtime disk niya. So I mentioned earlier here, you could mount it through this button and connect to Google Drive. Oh wait, hindi pala ako naka-share screen, no? Allow me to share my screen. Share. Is it being shared na? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Here, you could access it here, and then Drive, and then My Drive, and you'll be able to see all my files. But basically here in My Drive, you'll be able to see a folder called Colab. And if you access your Google Drive, just find a folder called Colab Notebooks, I think, or Colab. But if you access that, it's very obvious. Parang madali mo siyang makikita kasi iba yung kulay niya. Yellow yung folder niya. And nandoon lahat ng Jupyter Notebooks na Colab Notebooks na ginawa mo. But if you're going to try to access this one, say the Drive one, let me create a new link here or a new code cell here and try to run it will show up here na yung Drive dito na. So if I want to, it's also here, by the way. Nasan ba siya? Other command lines. EWD CD. So CD just means change directory. You could change your working directory by creating something like CD to Drive. And when you list what's inside your drive, you'll be able to see My Drive and Share Drive. So basically, pwede mo na siyang gamitin. This there. Isn't this there? Let's try. Yeah, makikita mo na siya. And nandito siya, si Colab Notebooks. So yung mga Colab Notebooks mo before, nandito lang. And you'll be able to access it the way you access your files. There, nandito lahat ng notebooks na ginamit ko. So I hope that answers your question. I know it could be pretty inconvenient, but if you're really just going to use this for learning and stuff, you'll be able to access it more with the Google Drive.
Okay. Right. Next, let's proceed to the next question. Can we connect our notebooks to HPC systems or hosted servers? That's the question from Ariel Gabriel.
This one in Google Colab, it's not possible, but you are allowed to connect to an existing Google Cloud instance kung meron kayo. So kapag meron kayong Google Cloud platform and you have a a Cloud Engine instance, you'll be able to see it here, drop down, connect to a custom GCE VM, and then
Ma'am,
just specify.
hindi po kayo nakashare screen.
Shucks, sorry. All right. Am I sharing the screen?
Yep.
All right, great. Let me just iterate earlier instructions. You'll be able to find it here in the upper right, just here in the drop down of RAM, disk, and stuff. You'll be able to see connect to a hosted runtime, which is yung sinishare lang yung default ni Google Colab. And here is custom GCE VM. So, hindi siya makaka-connect sa HPC, but kung meron kang Google Cloud Platform, Cloud Engine, Compute Engine instance, pwede mo siyang i-connect dito through just specifying your project, the zone it's located in, and yung instance. So, yun lang yung capability niya and none for HPCs, unfortunately.
Thank you, ma'am. So next question from Kerry Hiponia. Can Colab convert CSV to KML files to be viewed in Google Earth, or should it could only be viewed using its own GIS mapping?
I would like to defer this question to our GIS people. Ms. Kez, would you be able to answer this? Is she here? Or any one of our
I think Mark
GIS?
K might be the first.
I see. I will answer that. Hi. So if you're thinking of using CSV files, this will be you can use GeoPandas, which will be covered later sa vector processing session natin. So I think that next session. So kaya naman siya. So you can use Python to load the file and then plot it in a map. You can load base layers. So parang in a way, GeoPandas is almost like a GIS. So again, I hope that answers the question.
Sir RK to the rescue. So next one,
Thanks, Sir RK.
what's the purpose po ng text tab? I do get po yung use ng code tab to run my code, but how about the text tab? What is its use po? Saan po siya mag-appear when I run my codes? It's a question from Mr. Israel Jasper.
Okay, so si text cell, mag-appear siya anywhere you put them. And ang purpose talaga nila is for documentation. Like here in the notebook that I shared earlier, here I just literally just wrote down random things about what this notebook is about. And let me refer back to this table of contents. And here, para kung may kailangan kang i-document, say for instance, itong print random sum na to, gusto ko ma-document ko kung paano ko nagawa tong pag-print na to. I could do that by creating a text cell and just editing it to tell me that I edited or I created this line of code to print random A variable plus random B. So I think if you're just used to like writing your code, hindi mo talaga makikita yung importance niya. But if you're an educator or someone who likes to document yung mga ginagawa nyo, instead na magko-comment ka dito na doing this print some number, you could put a more detailed discussion about this one here in this particular text cell. So while it might not sound like a very good feature, ganyan, to others, it works. Parang, kunwari, ito, sinabi ng teacher niyo or someone na your supervisor na, could you please check this part of the code? And then you'd be able to instantly go to that line of code kasi naka-document na siya na, for instance, dito sa double click to edit. Alam mo na kagad kung nasaan siya. So I guess that's one advantage of doing text cells. Yung, at least yung manote mo man lang kung anong part ng code, kung nasa ang part ng code ka na. Parang ganon.
Right, thank you, Ma'am Ira. So next question, does Google have a Tableau-like program as well? Question coming from Sir Geoffrey Delicano.
I'm
So,
actually not sure. Hindi ko pa na-try. So probably not. Probably yes. I won't be able to give a more informed answer at the moment. So balikan kita. Maybe somewhere like in Discord. I'm not pretty sure about that.
Yeah. Ano lang din po, note sa participants that active po kami sa Discord. So if you have questions there, just shoot it maybe kahit after the event or during our sessions in the future. So next question, Ma'am Ira. Can Google Colab be published like a website?
Like a website, probably not. I'm not sure you could even say, how do I say this? I don't think kaya mo siyang i-embed somewhere like a website, but pwede mo siyang i-upload sa GitHub. So if like a normal notebook, like a regular notebook, but it won't be interactive like in a way na pwedeng mag-run or mag-edit yung person. Kailangan niyang i-download explicitly yun from GitHub. But if you want to share this with someone, like I did to you, you just click share and then pwede mo nang ibigay yung link to whoever needs the this notebook. Say this one. Makikita mo na dito kung yung link, yung general access. Pwede mo na siyang i-edit. And you can make that person either a commenter or an editor. I think that's another plus here in Google Colab, by the way. Hindi ko na mention kanina, but you could actually comment on any cell. So if you're working collaboratively, you could comment on, say, this part, and I'll write here, list documents from directory. Something like that.
Right.
It's
Okay, ma'am.
one of the features.
Thank you, ma'am. So maybe we are down on our last question. So curious lang po, ma'am, how much time did it take you to make this Colab notebook for this event? Question from Mr. Jeremiah Marimon.
How much time it took me to create this Colab notebook?
Yeah, I think that's
I really can't say much. I think an hour or two, mga ganon. Medyo ano na siya. Kasi, especially, I think mas nag-work on ako dito sa Texel because Markdown is another part of its own. It's different. Parang if you're not used to really working on Markdown, it could be quite a lot of work. It could take you a while. So while I may know how to do some Markdown, parang it's a struggle to do that quickly. So I'd say siguro the whole notebook took me around 1 or 2 hours to make.
okay. Thank you, ma'am. So maybe we can entertain another one. So na-try niyo na po ba na i-connect yung Google Colab to Google Data Studio? And it's a question from Mr. Kevin De Los Santos.
No, I haven't tried yet. And I'm not sure if it's also possible. Di ko pa sure. So I'm sorry I wouldn't be able to answer that one.
Right. So maybe that's it. If you have other questions, you can just shoot it us on our email or on the Discord server. So thank you, Ma'am Ira, for the presentation and answering all the questions.
Thank you.
So I hope everyone is still present. And here it is with us. We proceed to our last tutorial for today, which will be presented by Mr. Randy Beros. So Mr. Randy will introduce Python This will be our language in working with data. He will show us different Python object concepts and conditional statements. So without further ado, let's now call Mr. Randy Veros. Hi, Sir Randy.
Um, Hello everyone. Share ko lang yung screen ko. Yun. So, can you guys see my screen? Yun. Kung mapapansin nyo yung presentation ko ngayon is Google Colab notebook. Plinano talaga namin to. So, inuna muna namin yung Google Colab na discussion para ma-introduce yung natin, yung guests natin sa kung paano gamitin yung Google Colab. And then, ngayon, yung topic ng aking presentation is Introduction to Python. This presentation is just a brief overview, very simplified overview ng mga concepts ng Python. So, this course is aimed at individuals with very little to no programming background. So, yung nangyari kasi nung receive namin yung questionnaires sa registration form na finilapan nyo. Madami sa ating mga participants are students with very little experience with coding in Python. So yung mga succeeding na topics natin is very heavily dependent in very high Python concepts. So we decided na kailangan ng isang presentation, introducing man lang yung Python para lang mag-idea yung portion of our participants ano yung language na ginagamit sa data camp natin. So bakit natin yung isa pa pala bakit natin linagay yung discussion natin sa isang Google Colab. Yung isang essential advantage ng Google Colab, if you are just beginning to explore programming, particularly in Python, is kung kung gumagamit tayo ng Google Colab para mag-explore ng mga Python codes, pag-program ng Python, yung code base natin is nasa online na. So hindi na natin kailangang mag-install ng Python sa mga devices natin, sa mga PCs natin. So parang nagkakaroon ng less barrier to entry sa pag-explore ng programming language. So kaya namin dinesign yung presentation namin na nasa Colab. Yung nga pala this Google Colab is available for you to view and to replicate para yung mga participants natin pwede i-try yung mga concepts dito and i-execute yung mga Python commands dito para matest nila kung paano gumagana yung Python. This is especially useful para sa mga wala pa talagang experience at gusto lang talaga mag-try ng programming with Python. So let's start. So for this presentation, yung main questions na gusto nating masagot are ito na nilista ko na dito. What are the basic types of basic data types in Python? What are variables? Ano yung mga built-in functions? How to manipulate lists? How to execute for loop? How to use conditional statements? And how to create custom functions? Mapapansin natin dito sa ating mga main questions na lahat ito is kayang masagot ng Python only, na hindi na natin kailangan mag-import ng third-party Python libraries. So yung base Python, kaya na nito masagot yung mga questions na to. So we'll start with variable. Ano ba yung variable? A variable is a label that is a reference to an object or value. It serves as a pointer or identifier to a particular data in memory. So yung variable, ginagamit natin in Python para ma-access yung value ng data na naka-stored sa memory. So yung syntax ng pag-declare ng variable natin is variable name is equals to value. So kung meron tayong variables, ano yung mga basic data types ng variables natin? So meron tayong 4 na mga pinaka-basic talaga na data types for variables. Meron tayong string, which is just a collection of characters. Meron tayong integer are whole numbers. Whole numbers, so from negative infinity to positive infinity. Meron tayong floating point numbers are real numbers naman with decimal point. And lastly, we have Boolean, which is either true or false. Sorry, na double click ko. So for example, meron tayo ditong code. Code dito. So to see kung paano natin dinideclare yung variables natin. So for example dito, sa first code natin is dinideclare natin yung isang string into the variable satellite name. Yung pangalawa naman, dinideclare natin yung 2016 sa variable na satellite launch year. Pangatlo is dinideclare natin yung 52.4 sa variable na satellite weight. And yung pang-apat naman, dinideclare natin yung true sa variable na is satellite decommission. We can execute this. So yung nangyayari pag in-execute natin yung commands na to is yung values dito is mare-reference ng variable na to. Same for here, and same for here. So to check that, pwede nating i-print, tingnan yung laman ng satellite name now that na dineclare natin na yung satellite name is magre-reference sa string na Diwata 1. So if we play that, nakikita natin, return niya yung Diwata 1. So yun nga, successful yung pag-initialize natin ng variable. So yun yung unang concept natin na malalaman how to initialize a variable. Next naman are built-in functions. So Python has built-in functions are functions available in the base Python library that are readily available for use. So meron ng mga group of codes na nakalagay sa Python library na pwede na nating i-access agad-agad, so hindi na natin kailangan i-replicate yung functionalities nun. As of isa lang trivia, as of Python 3.8, Python has 69 built-in libraries. So 69 built-in libraries na yung meron sa Python as of Python 3.8. So dito naman i-discuss natin yung yung mga common built-in functions. So nag-select lang tayo ng 3 para hindi tayo ma-overwhelm. So yung una nating i-discuss is yung print. The print built-in function prints the value of the parameter provided to the console. So yung syntax niya is print value. So yung gagawin niya, yung value na nasa loob ng print is i-print niya sa console. Later on, makikita natin yan in action. Dito naman, yung pangalawa, yung type. Type naman na built-in function returns the data type of the parameter provided to the function. So, yung syntax niya is type, open, close parenthesis, value. So, yung type, yung data type ng value na nasa loob ng type, yun yung i-display, i-return niya yung data type. Yung pangatlo naman is len. Len returns the number of elements in an iterable object or list, returns the number of characters when strings is provided. So len value, so parang bibilangin lang niya kung ilan yung iteration ng object or list. For string naman, yung special case, meron din len yung string kasi basically string is just parang a collection of characters. So parang yung binibilang niya dito talaga is yung number of characters ng string. Dito meron tayong sample code yung para i-test yung Python, yung mga functions na parang discuss natin dito. For example, printing the values of variables. So sa first section natin, nag-declare tayo ng variables. Gusto naman natin dito is i-print yon. So if i-execute natin yung command na to, yung print niya is yung print niya yung satellite name which is Diwata 1. Satellite launch year is 2016. Satellite weight, kg na variable is 52.4 and is satellite decommission is true. For prints naman, pwede din prints also accepts multiple values. So for example here, instead of parang nag-provide lang tayo ng isang value, naglagay tayo ng madaming values. So parang a combination of variables and strings separated by a comma. Yung mangyayari in this case is i-print niya yung each element na nasa loob ng print and parang lalagyan lang ng space in between. So if i-execute natin to, yung i-print niya is dito is yung na-print niya is string na nagsasabi na Diwata 1 was launched last 2016 weighing at 52.4 kilograms. So yan, trivia yan. So yung Diwata 1 natin ni-launch noong 2016. So yun. Dito naman is parang printing yung data type ng variable. So kung gusto naman natin ma-check kung ano yung mga data types ng variables natin, we can execute this command. Yung gagawin niya lang is parang, for example here, the satellite name variable as a data type, comma, data type. So yung ginagawa lang is parang print lang niya yung data type ng kada variable na sinet natin dito. So for example, yung satellite name, str, which is short for string. Satellite launch year is int, short for integer. Satellite weight is float, short for floating point number, and is satellite decommission variable is bool, which is short for boolean. Dito naman, yung len naman, so pwede nating malaman yung length ng string natin, which is referred by satellite name. So if i-execute natin yung command na to, magsasabi siya na the string Diwata 1 has 8 characters. So kung bilangin nga natin, 8 nga ba yung Diwata 1? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So tama naman. So may 8 characters nga yung Diwata 1. So okay. Tapos na tayo sa variables. Tapos na din tayo sa built-in functions. Doon naman tayo sa list. Lists are used to store multiple items or objects in a single variable. So yung syntax ng list is list, open, close, square bracket. Tapos yung nasa loob niya is mga values separated by comma. So for this instance, parang may values 1, 2, 3, ... until kung ilan man yung gusto nating i-store na iteration ng elements dito sa list na to. So kung meron tayong list, so one thing to take note is yung list natin is hindi siya necessarily na dapat yung mga elements na nasa loob ng list is magkaka-same ng data type. So parang for example dito, if value 1 is string, it does not necessarily mean na value 2 should be a string. Pwede yung magkaiba sila. Pwede yan. Value 1 is string, value 2 is integer, value 3 is float. So depende sa trip ng programmer. Kung meron naman tayong list ng list ng elements, gusto naman natin i-access yon. So we can access a list of an element in a list by accessing its index. So indexing list. Yung syntax naman to access an element in the list is list name, open square bracket, index, close square bracket. Double click ulit. So ano yung index na to na sinasabi dito? So yung index is yung position ng element na gusto nating i-access sa list. So for example dito, value 1 is nasa simula, yung index niyan is 0. Value 2 is pangalawa, index niyan is 1. Value 3 is index 2, and so on and so forth. So kung mapapansin natin, sa pag-index natin ng elements sa isang list, yung indexing natin is nag-start sa 0, hindi nag-start sa 1. Parang nakakalito, di ba? However, that's how it works in programming talaga. Nag-start sa 0 kasi yung binaries natin is nag-start sa 0 din. So yun yung ginagamit natin pang reference ng mga indexes. So yun. So yung indexes natin, which is 0, 1, 2, so on and so forth. So, for example, kung gusto natin i-access sa list na to, yung i-access yung value 3, we want to index yung 0, 1, 2. So, we want to get the list name of 2 sa index. The next part naman sa manipulating a list is getting a subset of a list. So kung meron tayong habang list, then gusto lang natin na parang subset lang ng list yung gusto natin kunin, yung syntax para ma-extract yung subset ng list na yon is subset list is equals to list name of open square bracket start index colon end index. Yung tricky lang dito, yung start index is inclusive. So kung gusto nating makuha yung, for example, yung values, yung list lang from ng values 1 to 2, so index 0 and 1. Yung corresponding subset niyan doon is parang list name of start index which is 0 and end index which is 2. Kasi yung end index is hindi siya included sa mga elements na ikukunin natin sa subset. So parang kung gusto natin kunin yung first two elements, so yung syntax niyan is list name open square bracket 0 colon 2 close square bracket. So yun, diniscuss natin yung parang list and how to manipulate it, pero gusto natin makita yan in action. So meron tayong example code dito sa baba. So yung unang sample code is parang declaring a list. So for example, meron tayong Filipino-made satellites na i-store natin sa Filipino-made satellites na variable yung list of the names of satellites na ginawa nga ng mga Pinoy. So para meron tayo dito Diwata 1, Diwata 2, Maya 1, Maya 2, Maya 3, Maya 4. So meron tayong index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So parang meron tayong 6 na elements from index 0 to index 5. So if i-execute natin to, yun nga, naka-create nga tayo ng list of strings. What if naman gusto nating i-access yung index 4 ng list na yan? So index 4 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Maya 3. So tingnan nga natin kung Maya 3 yung ma-access natin using the syntax Filipino-made satellites index 4. So if i-play natin to, so the element in index 4 of the variable Filipino-made satellites is Maya 3. Oh, so tama nga. So tama nga yung syntax natin for accessing the index of the list. So yung pangatlo naman is kung gusto natin ma-access yung the first two element. So parang ginawa nating example kanina. So kung gusto lang natin ma-access yung Diwata 1 at Diwata 2, first two elements. Yung syntax na sinabi natin noon kanina is list of index 0 colon 2. Itas nga natin kung tama yung syntax na sinabi natin kanina. If we execute this, yung nire-return niya is a subset of Filipino-made satellites of list satellites list with the first two element is Diwata 1 and Diwata 2. So tama nga. So tama yung syntax natin for accessing a subset of a list. So yun, that's it for yung sa list naman natin na topic. Next na topic na papasadahan naman natin is loops. So yung loops naman, a for loops in particular, a for loop is used to iterate over a sequence of list, tuples, strings, or other iterable objects. So kung mayroon kang objects na iterable, parang mayroon kang series of objects, pwede natin yan ipasadahan ng for loop. Yung syntax niya is for item in list name, execute code. So yung nangyari lang dito sa for item in list name, so every element of the list, for every element in the list, i-store niya sa item and i-execute niya yung code na to. So parang yung code na to is may execute equivalent
maybe we are having an internet difficulty po, with Sir Randy. So maybe we can just wait for maybe he can reconnect. So while waiting, if you have other questions or medyo naguguluhan po kayo or curious to what Mr. Randy is discussing, then you can just shoot your questions in the chat box. And maybe kapag medyo medyo hindi nyo rin pa ma-explain masyado kung ano yung I mean maintindihan yung dinidiscuss din, just watch out for maybe sessions on our Discord server. So because we are kind of planning to have a consultation time or window. So just be active in Discord and engage. Engage to us or on the other participants that's inside that server, because that's what SIICaP is for. Like we are kind of promoting and building a community. So yeah, so let's just wait for Mr. Randy to come back. Medyo umuulan po kasi ata ngayon, so mahina ang ating mga internet connections. Yep. Excited to join the community with similar interests. Yep. We are also excited to meet everyone. So yep, so maybe we can just wait for 5 minutes and then someone in my team will take over and discussion the fighting. So maybe if anyone has like insights or questions, just send it in the chat. Huwag na po kayong mahiya. Let's go. So, Sir Randy, pabalik na rin po siya. So, wait lang tayo. Pwede pong pa-send ulit yung link for Discord. Sige po, wait lang. Oh, you can back read po. Ayun, sinend na pala ng aking links. So, Mr. Randy is pabalik na rin. And then we can have a CR break. Yeah. Let's take this opportunity to have a health break. Inom muna po na kayo ng tubig or pasok po na kayo ng CR. Medyo intense na kasi yung discussion. Medyo baka information overload tayo. So, inom-inom rin po ng tubig. Alright, we'll be back in 5 minutes. So we will resume at exactly 3:18. So standby lang po muna. All right. So let's continue on our discussion. So Sir RK Aranas will take over because Mr. Randy Veros has encountered a technical internet difficulty. So to continue our lectures or session, let's all welcome Sir RK.
And thank you, Dre. So, sandali lang. I'll just share my screen. Tapos habol lang ako. Sige, hello. Hi everyone. So I'll be taking over sa kay Randy. So I think we stopped sa for loops, no? So for loops is used to iterate over a sequence. So napakita na ni Randy kanina yung may list. So kung may laman yung list, the for loop allows you to go through each item. So like, I think it's better to demonstrate it na lang, no? So ito for example, may listahan tayo ng mga ground receiving stations ng PhilSA. So we have one sa ASTI, sa Davao, saka sa Iloilo. So lang to, dinedeclare lang natin, di ba, na may for loop. And then, na may list. And then for the for loop, so we remember yung syntax kanina, for item in list name. So so location yung item in Philippine GIS list. So you can see the output. So yun. So inano niya. So sa list na to, it will go first sa ASTI. So tapos ipa-plug in niya dito, di ba? So print location. So ASTI has a ground receiving station. Davao has a ground receiving station. So ayun, yun yung ginagawa niya. So every time, ito yung basic way of going through lahat ng items sa isang list. Kasi otherwise, we will have to say, i-index mo isa-isa, di ba? Like, Philippine GIS location / colon, ano pa. Otherwise, yung manual way, di ba, is magiging, siya. Philippine GIS location, medyo magtatagal siya kung ganun. Okay. So the list makes it convenient, the for loop makes it convenient for us to do that. So instead na i-assign natin yung indices niya. And aside sa for loop, meron din tayong conditional statements. So ito is, in a way, pwede mo siyang isipin na filter. So tingnan natin yung flow chart. So for example, yung expression mo is ito. So iti-test mo siya kung true or false. Tapos if it's true, then gagawin mo yung body ng code. If not, minsan ika-catch mo siya with an elif. So yun. I think it's better to just demonstrate it. So yung format niya is ganito, yung syntax niya. So itong if expression equals true, so ito yung tinetest mo, tapos kung tama siya, do something, and then pag hindi to true, you can catch yung result by another elif pa rin. So like second condition, kung wala talaga, yung pinaka-final mo is usually an else statement. So ito yung example code. So here we have, we assigned the Iloilo ground receiving station sa diba, GIS name. Tapos yung may diameter siya. So ito, diameter to ng satellite dish. Kasi ground receiving stations are how we communicate with satellites. So may satellite dish. No different from yung nakikita nyo, I guess, sa bahay. I think sa Signal ba yun? Or sa Dream, mga ganun. So nag-assign tayo sa taas, diba? So GRS is Iloilo, tapos 3.5 meters. So tapos may if statement tayo, diba? So if GIS diameter is greater than 5, then ito yung sasabihin niya na the antenna. Tapos else, kung hindi to totoo, we can do another check. So if the diameter is less than 5 and greater than 3.5, then ito din. Tapos kung hindi talaga tatama tong dalawang to, we can just do this else statement. So sabihin niya na diameter has less than So running this, we can see that the diameter has, yung Iloilo ground station has an antenna diameter of less than So ganun lang siya. So nasa range lang. And the next one is, ito naman is, aside sa Python, aside sa if statements, condition, we can also do functions. So it's a group of statements or code that performs a specific task. So ito is para kung nakagawa ka na ng functionality, pwede mo na siyang tawagin elsewhere in the program. So like yung example natin dito is nag-define tayo ng function to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, diba? So this one. So ito yung formula ng Fahrenheit to Celsius. So yung syntax niya for definition, is ganito. So def, function name, and then yung parameter. So yung input value ng function. So yung simplest case niya is ito lang. So def, function name, and then yung input niya. So in this case, diba, yung freezing point ng Fahrenheit is 32 degrees Celsius. Define mo natin to. And then freezing point. So gusto natin makuha yung freezing point niya. We have the value in Fahrenheit, and then we want to get the Celsius equivalent. So nirarun natin yung function, and then we assign the value to Celsius. So if we run this, so yun, andun na siya. So the freezing point, yung una is piniprint lang niya yung Fahrenheit, which is yung nasa taas. So ano lang naman siya, 32 degrees. Tapos the Celsius equivalent niya is 0 degrees. So yung power ng functions is, kung wala kang function, ang mangyayari, diba, every time you want to do that, you will have to copy-paste itong formula na to, diba? Every time you want to, for example, do Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion, you will have to do this, copy-paste mo each time. But by defining a function, in a way, you give it a name, and then you can just call it anytime. So, for example, ito. So, meron na tayong Fahrenheit to function, diba? So, Fahrenheit to function. So, ano nga yung other? Boiling point. Ano yung boiling point? Fahrenheit. So, for example, yung boiling point sa Fahrenheit is 212, diba? So, you can just put it there, and i-call mo yung function. And yeah, tama naman. So, it returns boiling point in Celsius, which is 100 degrees. So, ayun, tapos na tayo. So ito yung key learnings natin. So we have covered yung variables. So it's giving names to values. So which helps us to make them easy to retrieve later. So parang ito yung sample freezing point in Fahrenheit, diba? Instead of memorizing yung 32, we can just put it there, assign it, and then we can just recall them later. Tapos, nakita din natin yung mga built-in functions ni Python to make it easier for us to use the language, like print. So, para ma-show natin yung mga values or function results. Yung type din para alam mo kung ano yung type siya, kung string ba siya, kung integer. Tapos yung length din, so you can see yung length ng items. So, marami pang built-in na functions. We can check it later. And then we also covered yung mga lists, so which allows us to group together items, and see paano din sila i-index at kunin yung mga laman, and then as for loops to get the values easily, tas conditional statements, and also we learn to create functions then. So all these skills will be useful later when we start using Python to process data. So I hope you've learned a lot, and we'll be sharing din yung itong notebook na to, so you can play around with it. And I think that's all for now. So questions na lang. And pasensya na, internet problems happen. I think nandito na si Randy. So Randy can be there for the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Sir RK and Sir Randy. So let's proceed to our Q&A. I'm quite confident that our participants have learned a lot during our presentation. So let's it's a question here. There's a question here from, I think, Miss Patricia Algura. So how do we define data types if we want to force an array to be only storing integer or string, for instance? I think Sir Arki can answer it. How do we define data types if we want to force an array to be
Mm.
only storing integer string, for instance?
Hello. So, yung sa basic list type ng Python, it will only ano siya, mixed types, no? If you want to do that, I think it would be better to use something like NumPy. So, yung numerical tool ng Python kasi it would be much faster. Yung sa Python kasi at least sa ano niya, sa mga yung mga basic data types niya, if you're familiar with C, 'di ba dinidefine mo lahat doon ng mga data types. Sa Python kasi more of mas flexible siya. So I think it's called duck typing. So kung ano yung sinasabi mo, yun lang yung kailangan. So if you have to force this, I think it would be better to use something like NumPy.
Okay, clear. Thanks, Sir RK. Next question. So, what if gusto ko po yung value 1 and value 3? Kumbaga mag-jump po ako ng isa sa subset, kaya kaya po ba yun using index? So, it's question from Mr. Israel Jasper Waki.
Sa subset, wait. Yung nakalimutan ko na ito. I'll have to check. So,
Pwede nga ako na lang yung sumagot, sir.
sige. Go. Stride
Ayan.
yun, di ba?
So, as I understand it, parang medyo complicated yung gustong subset ni sir. Short answer, Short answer, hindi pwede dun sa mga built-in or yung sa mga default na methods ng Python. But there are ways or techniques to achieve yung yung gusto ni sir. If meron tayong time, siguro pwede ako mag-share ng screen to demonstrate yung solution. So,
Go ahead, sir.
Here's a Python notebook. So, say meron akong list na random na lang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then, sabihin natin na I want to get yung values na second and fourth value sa list. So since one thing to note lang sa list, zero index siya. So if I wanted to get yung second tsaka yung fourth value lang sa list, this will correspond sa 1 tsaka sa 3 na index. So ako, I will do it like this. So y will be something like, although advanced, this list comprehension yata yung tawag dito. So I will iterate first dun sa list for I in x, and then I will declare this na x of I. Tama ba to? So let's try ko na i-print yung y later on. Oh, nag-error.
Sir Noel, I think it's range ng len of x.
For I in range of x. Well, nag-iterate ako. Nag-iterate din ako sa loob ng x.
Yeah, because for I in range ng len of x. So that it's
Okay.
0 to ano. Yes.
Sige, so for I in range length of x.
And then, ano
Ay,
lang,
wait.
wala naman
Gets ka na. For I in, gagawa ko ng list ko ng index. Ito, yan. Nangyari pa rin. Sobrahan ba ako ng...
Live coding.
Ayan, sorry. So, medyo complicated na ano lang to na code, but yun nga, wala lang siyang built-in to get yung gusto mangyari, but there are ways to achieve this. So for example, like this, kinuha ko yung second tsaka yung fourth values sa list, which is supposedly yun nga, 2 tsaka 4 siya. And then gumawa ako ng ganitong list comprehension by first iterating doon sa loob ng 4, and then kinukuha ko yung value niya doon sa list ng indices na gusto ko, and then gumagawa ko ng another list. So medyo complicated siya, but yeah, wala kasi siyang built-in to achieve yung gustong mangyari niya. I think meron din natang isa pa na way using sa item getter. So kapag ganito, pwede kong declare na z equals item getter. Yung list ng indices first, second, 1 tsaka 3. Tapos x, and then print ko z. So ayan, same lang. Although naka-tuple lang ito. Hindi ko lang sure kung na-discuss yung tuple. So if you want to make this a list, pwedeng gawing list na lang na ganito. Para silang naka-list form.
Ay, nagkaroon
Ayun,
po
sir.
bigla ng machine problem. So nakita niyo po kung paano in real time how our speakers think yung thought process using Python.
I did may share lang din ako sa index naman. So yes, sandali lang. So another way of doing it. So I'm not sure kung check ko lang yung desktop ko. Tama naman. So I think tama ba yung gusto niya? Kung gusto niya makuha yung third at yung fourth, isi-skip, no?
Yes, sir.
So sa ano pala, sorry, ngayon ka ni-review. Yung nakita nyo kasing ano, di ba, yung slicing na alam natin, yung ano lang, ano lang siya, di ba? Yung dalawa lang yung parameters, di ba, yung start and stop. So like ito, 2 to 5. So ang mangyari, 3, 4, 5 makukuha natin. But actually sa ano pala, sa Python, yung list actually may extra siyang parameter. So yung natin, di ba, start, stop. May next parameter pa pala pwede nating which is stride. So yun yung by default 0 yan so tuloy-tuloy lang. Pero dito we can change it such that so kunin natin yung 2, index 2 which is yung third, di ba? Tapos yung stop natin sa 5. Tapos yung stride natin di ba? 0 na lang to para hanggang dulo. Tapos yung stride natin is 2 so every 2 items. So dito makukuha natin siya. So 3 or 5 lang. Mag-skip siya. But kung mahaba yung mo, mapupuno siya. I mean, uulit siya. Like, pag naging 6 na to, for example. 6, 7. Doon na papasok yung stop mo. Ayun. So, haba siya. Pero ito din, may stop naman siya. So, nahanap ko siya gamit yung ating favorite, yung favorite friend ng mga programmers. So Stack Overflow, you can also look at the Python documentation. So yun lang. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Sir RK and Sir Noel, for that very malupit na solution. Medyo mahirap yung question ni Sir ni Sir Israel. So next question. Kunin po natin yung question ni Mr. Tolibas Daniel. Tanong lang po sa custom function, kapag gagamitin po ba yung add far2Celsius function sa ibang function, necessary po ba na iset muna yun sa isang global variable or pwede na po siyang gamitin agad sa loob ng function? Sir RK or Sir Noel?
Hindi na si Randy.
Sir Randy. Ito po, sir. I think this is an example po kanina dun sa function.
Hello everyone, I'm back. Sorry na busy ako. Currently nasa phone lang ako ngayon. So for functions naman, yung importante lang sa functions is kailangan visible siya before siya i-call ng ano yun. So dapat before siya i-call ng code mo, kailangan siya is na-declare na yung function na yun and visible siya sa code mo. Pag visible na siya, pwede na siyang i-call ng ano yun, ng code and then mag-execute na dapat siya.
Thanks, Sir Randy. So, next question. Another question, para sa data camp po na ito, gaano po ba kalalim yung concept namin na kailangan namin matutunan sa Python? Like, kailangan po ba namin matutunan yung OOP, database, etc.? Or basic of Python lang po yung kailangan matutunan? And how about math? Kailangan po ba namin ng knowledge sa algebra, stats, or other math concept? Another question from Mr. Tolibas.
I think for me of course parang yung mga topics natin later on sa data camp is parang mas nagiging complex na mas mga high level na yon. High level na ng Python, high level na ng programming yung kailangan para makasunod doon. However, yung advantage kasi natin dito sa data camp is yung mga resources natin, yung mga code base natin na gagamitin natin sa mga lessons na i-discuss natin for future data camps is magiging available sa lahat ng participants. So kahit newbie ka pa lang, you can take your time. So parang dahan-dahanin mo lang mag-aral ng mga basic concepts. Simulan mo sa pinaka-basic talaga, work your way up until ma-point na parang nagigets mo na yung medyo advanced concepts. Yung resources is nandyan lang yan, ibibigay namin for you para para meron kayong references in the future. So kahit wala kayong masyadong experience in Python currently, huwag kayong ma-intimidate at huwag kayong umattend pa rin kayo sa future ng mga data camps namin. Kahit naman hindi nyo totally mag-gets yun yung mga parang ini-explain doon. At least parang meron pa rin kayong matututunan nun. And then, available pa rin yung mga resources for you para magamit nyo in the future. So, I highly suggest na tapusin nyo ito yung data camp pa rin.
Sige. I will add na lang, Dre.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Randy, for that. So, ulitin ko lang din sinabi ko kanina. So, medyo yung ibang topics nga medyo mahirap siya yung later. But we structure this data camp in such a way na, di ba, may Jupyter Notebook na magra-run siya tapos without setup. So, at least, pag natapos yung data camp, you will know how to do things. But of course, to produce, for example, may plot ng map na mararan nyo siya. Pero yung computation na gaganap from under the hood, medyo baka hindi niyo pa maintindihan agad. But I think yung main purpose din ng data camp naman is more of practical skills. So for us, we're not really, I think most of you are not really programmers, diba? So for us, Python is a tool. So in the same way na a spreadsheet is a tool. So yung goal is to make things happen, to solve a problem. So yung goal ng data camp is to make you, to equip you with the tools. Tapos if you want, ayun, sabi ni Randy, na provide naman namin lahat ng ng resources. So if you want to go deeper, you can, but you can, at least at this level, you can now process the yung data sets. But of course, it would be better if you can dig deeper. But at least ngayon may tools na kayo. Yun nga lang, ang mangyari nga lang, malilimit kayo in a way. If you don't go deeper, malilimit kayo kung ano yung binigay namin, di ba? Mag-edit kayo ng mga values. Ganun. Tapos kung may gusto kayong case na nagde-deviate sa the way we solve the problem, mahihirapan kayo. So yun yung totoong beauty ng programming. Once you've gone deeper, you can make your own tools. So yung limit mo na lang is yung in a way your imagination. But for now, I think sorry, nag-digress na ako. So to go back to your question, na kailangan ba? It's not really necessary. So you can do stuff pa rin. You can finish it without knowing OOP, but it will really help, and it will be very useful down the line once you start to solve problems na nagde-deviate na sa problems na itatakol namin dito sa Data Camp. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sir Randy and Sir RK. So, meron pa po bang gustong humabol ng questions? Yep. So, there's a question from Labrat. Sir RK, Sir Randy. Are you using Python in Maya 2?
Hindi ako familiar sa Maya 2. Sir RK, may idea ka ba?
Hindi rin ako part ng team ng Maya 2 eh. Pero I think sa satellite mismo, they don't use that. Ibang languages yung gamit sa embedded software. So it's more like mga C and C++. But I'm not sure kung sa ground station meron silang ginagamit na Python. May someone ba from Step Up here or from the Maya team? Baka mas masagot nila. Kasi kami, downstream kami, nasa data na kami na part. Yung sa Maya mismo, hindi kami kasama doon. Parang wala rin. Balikan na lang namin kayo if may hanap kami ng person from the Maya team. And
Yep.
we'll get, yeah.
Noted po yung question. So, yeah. So, maybe we can reach out na lang po sa Discord later. So, I guess, so there's a question here. Will you also include info or lectures on how to do batch processing with vector and raster data using Python? I believe, yes. It will be included on our future sessions. So just always attend the SIICaP lectures. So that is very exciting also. So I think that's it. So there are no more questions in the Q&A. Or maybe, oh wait, there's, I think, one also, because I think we have time naman. So, okay, we'll be using NumPy and Pandas. It's from Mr. John William Embate.
Ay,
Yeah.
sige, I'll answer na. Wala pa ata yung magtuturo ng Pandas. So we'll not be using NumPy and Pandas directly. So we'll be using if I recall correctly, GeoPandas na siya. So it uses NumPy and Pandas under the hood, pero may geospatial component na siya. But if you know how to use GeoPandas, I think it will translate naman to Pandas then. So
All right. Thanks, RK. So last call on questions if you have. Huwag na pong mahiya. Ayun. So for question from Mr. Paolo Magnata, how big are the data sets we're working with for the lectures pala? How big are the data sets?
hello. Sige, ulit. Since we'll be using Collab, at like na-mention ni Ira kanina, I think one of the ways we'll be using yung data is i-mount natin siya sa Google Drive. So we won't really be delving into big data dito. So baka under a gig siguro, mga ganun lang. Small data lang. So kasi more of proof of concept lang naman talaga siya. So I think kung may big data man na part, baka demo na lang yun or extras na lang. So for now, nasa ano pa tayo? Yung maliliit pa na data. Siguro a few hundred megs or so.
Alright. Thank you, Sir RK. So may pahabol po. So last question to PH satellite has publicly accessible data for practice. Oh, Sir RK, I think.
So good question. So yung team namin, we're with the PHL microsatellite program. So kami yung nagma-manage ng data. However, nasa transition pa kasi. So yung microsatellite tsaka Stamina for Space programs kasi they're with UP. So yung data sets ay nasa UP. And now we're transferring them to PhilSan na for continuity at future operations. So ngayon hindi pa siya tapos eh. So baka next quarter pa namin siya we'll try namin ihabol for the later parts ng data camp, pero we can't promise kung hindi I mean as of this moment hindi pa siya available for public access kasi tina-transfer pa namin yung servers. So you can look forward to, I think, Diwata to data yun. So stuck na siya mostly RGB, mga ganun. At I think my last question pa, yung limitations ng Python. So I think for most of our use cases, you can use it for pretty much anything. Pero yung Python as programming languages go, dahil interpreted siya, hindi siya compiled. Tapos hindi nyo dinidefine yung data types. Diba? So may flexibility ka, you can change the types, yung string or integer or float siya, whatever. Pero dahil doon, may overhead yun yung flexibility na yun. So, as languages go, medyo mabagal siya. So, like, you wouldn't write an operating system in Python or kung speed talaga yung habol mo, kung sobrang mabilis, kailangan yung data processing mo, usually you wouldn't do it with Python or you would use Python libraries na under the hood gumagamit siya ng something faster like Fortran or C. Actually, yung ginagamit for data processing din, yung mga satellite image processing, like yung gagamitin natin yung Rasterio, or gumagamit yun under the hood ng NumPy. So, hindi na yun Python. But I think for most of, so mostly speed yung Tsaka for, say, embedded programming, medyo mahirap siya. Though I think there are some tools na for that. Pero in general, hindi siya ginagamit for that. And thank you. I hope.
Thank you, Sir RK. And then, I think that's it. Yung question po pala ni Sir Israel, maybe we can do it in this Discord na lang during the drop-in sessions. So, medyo maganda tayo dun mag-solve ng mga problem sets or machine drop problems. All right. So, thank you very much for everyone who participated in our Q&A, especially thank you, Sir Randy, Sir Noel, and Sir RK, and all the questions of participants who answered, who posted a question. So, I believe that's it for today. But before we send the feedback, may we ask for a quick photo opportunity with our speakers? So, picture muna po. So, meron po tayong quick picture lang for our speakers. So, for today's documentation. Ayun. So, ako na rin po yung mag-take ng picture. So, in 3, 2, 1. Smile. Another one po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Alright. Thank you very much po. So,
Okay.
thank you for everyone for participating in the first session of our data camp. We will now send the link for the evaluation. So please answer them to receive the certificate of attendance of today's session. That's a wrap. Again, I am Draylen Jan Terrible from High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division. So thank you and see you next week for our second session. Have a great weekend ahead. Thank you po.